What is addiction? In the simplest terms, addiction is a mental condition that is the result of attachment plus obsessive or repetitive thoughts and/or behavior. Addiction can also be noted as creating a belief that we cannot live without something. Technically, most if not all humans are addicted to something, and we can become addicted to literally anything: a feeling, a belief, an experience, food or substance, a person, and most commonly, we become addicted to life itself. Not all addictions are maladaptive, and many addictions have resulted in some of the most fantastic human achievements. However, all addictions are potentially harmful and, in many cases, can lead to death or prison if not recognized and properly treated. Let's look at addiction from a few different perspectives and see how it may be affecting your life. Starting with the first component, attachment. Attachment is described as emotional thoughts, and the more we invest our emotions into thoughts, the more we suffer the attachment is broken or maladaptive. Imagine if you come to own a puppy and it becomes your best friend. Every moment you invest experiencing emotions in this connection to this pet represents how much it will hurt when the animal is gone. The hows and whys of the loss may increase the intensity of the experience and leave a person emotionally destroyed, incapable of functioning properly until they have completed the grieving process. Heartfelt experiences create the sensation that something outside of ourselves is a part of us, and we need it in our lives to feel complete. Grieving the loss of a pet would be considered a normal and healthy part of life. Attachment eventually hurts, but is worth the investment to many people. Where attachment becomes sickness is when we are in complete denial about the potential harm of our loss and overinvest ourselves into one thing. As such, some people grieve the loss of a pet even more severely than the loss of a loved one or family member. The second component of addiction is the obsessive or repetitive aspect. Example: imagine an elderly villager who wakes to find the path he took through a beautiful jungle paradise was destroyed overnight by foresters. The foresters are in denial of the harm they cause and justify it with profits. The villager is in denial about how the universe is unpredictable and nothing is promised to anyone. Any thought or behavior we experience with repetition becomes comfortable and gives us a false sense of being. Next, we'll look at addiction in terms of reward values and the mechanics of the brain itself. Using food as a basis, let's compare the nature of eating a piece of cake versus the experience of eating delicious, ripe fruit. Both of these experiences create an ah sensation in the brain. However, one is a true reward value and the other is false. When we enjoy something that is healthy for ourselves, the experience is encoded with serotonin and gives us a true value sensation of gratitude. However, eating the cake is encoded with a dopamine, giving us a false reward value because we are responding to the highly addictive and unhealthy pleasures of processed foods and not nutrition. A third way to consider addiction is how we create the condition of denial within ourselves. When we behave in a way that is enjoyable, though it is harmful, our minds begin making adjustments, program fixes, so that we can make sense of what we're doing. Using a paradoxical equation, the mind creates a state of denial and blinds us to the harm. To maintain the behavior, we tell ourselves, "It's not that bad." This statement, when closely examined, exposes ego as justifying and going against our best interests. It, what is it? The harm that is present is not. Denial. We are denying the harm. That bad. How bad? As bad as it is. It's not that bad equals the harm is not as bad as the harm is. Then the mind seeks an example of something worse, and now reinforces the statement with, "See, it's not that bad." This cycle is used by humans to minimize painful experiences daily. No pain, no gain is a common value in exercise. However, the reward values of exercise are only genuine until we take the behavior too far and neglect other parts of our lives. Even exercise and healthy eating can become life-threatening addictions. People can justify almost any behavior with this formula, which can become progressive and destructive. Even those in the highest places can end up in tragic and poverty-stricken stations, from Wall Street to Skid Row in small stages of "it's not that bad." Once a person is consumed by their addiction, most of their thoughts become focused on feeding the behavior and they begin collecting enablers. Well-meaning codependents unknowingly help addicts avoid the consequences of their choices and prolong the sickness. Addicts often express narcissistic personality traits, like most people do when defending an attachment. Trapped in an addiction, the behaviors are magnified, and people become pathological liars in defense of their addictions. Addictions take the lives of millions of well-meaning people each year, many people who just do not understand the nature of the condition. Coining the phrase from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, alcoholism and in truth all addictions are cunning, baffling, and powerful. The adverse effects on the subconscious mind are difficult to comprehend, and addicts may need years of recovery to return to a healthy standard of thought, behavior, and living. Recovering from addiction is widely misunderstood and thought that it's a matter of willpower. This is the opposite of the truth. Addictions cannot be broken or controlled by willpower. In fact, no recovery begins until a person has experienced the act of surrender. Surrender is an essential but overlooked stage of grieving. Traditionally, the Kubler-Ross model of grieving says that the stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Yet anger and depression are the polar ends of bargaining, and it is actually the act of surrender that is required before we can enter into acceptance. Logically speaking, we cannot learn anything new until we surrender our will and let go of our desire to hold on to our old beliefs. Surrender is the ultimate act of humility and requires a childlike willingness to feel utterly powerless and defeated by the universe. The more complete the act of surrender, the more deeply it is felt, and our bodies express this loss in tears. With tears of letting go, one at a time we break our emotional attachments and surrender to how life truly is. Once we have exhausted our will and given up, we are now ready to receive the result of grieving, acceptance of a new reality. For addicts, this surrender only happens once the behavior runs its course and the pain is so great we can no longer live with or without the addiction. At this point, the bargaining mind crashes. Thoughts destroy themselves as people face the consequences of their behavior. When an addict crashes, this is known as hitting bottom and causes a shift in consciousness many people refer to as a spiritual awakening. Sadly, the awakening is just the beginning of the journey. Recovery begins following surrender. The goal of recovery is to help willing participants learn a better way of living that protects us from the effects of addiction.